Hello, this is Otaimin. It's been a while since we last met. Today I'd like to share a short story with you. As I mentioned in a previous video, my first company was On Media, where I led the cyber money team back when I was 28 or 29. That was when the Lineage phenomenon was just emerging, and I studied it. Lineage is an NCSoft title. In 2014, right after I published my book Bitcoin is Strong, NCSoft reached out to me. They asked me to come and give an economics lecture. That worked out nicely since the book had just come out. So in preparing the lecture, I included microeconomics, but what I emphasized even more was this: why Lineage was a kind of cradle for Bitcoin, and how a revolution could unfold if Lineage items were combined with blockchain technology. Apparently, the executive office wanted to review my lecture materials, so I submitted them in advance, and I was a bit shocked. They told me, as for Lineage items being traded for cash, NCSoft has nothing to do with that. Of course, they knew about it, but they followed what's often called NCND, neither confirming nor denying, no acknowledgement, no denial, no comment at all. So they asked me to delete that part. That was back in May or June of 2014. And as you know, just last month, NCSoft combined their in-game items with NFTs, and their stock price jumped. Not to prop up the price, but to present a vision. It took 7.5 years for that to happen. Of course, it's not like those years were meaningful just because I said something. But personally, it feels quite moving when I look back. That was exactly the point I was trying to convince NCSoft of back then. Now, what do you think about the fact that the government has the power to make laws? This is a critical question. Satoshi Nakamoto himself put it like this: the government is a player competing against you while also acting as the referee. And if they feel like they're losing, they simply change the rules. So whether they're a good or bad referee doesn't even matter. That's just the nature of the opponent. So can you win against such a player? It's hard to beat them in that kind of game. But Bitcoin, created by Satoshi, is meaningful precisely because it was built with that kind of government in mind. Eventually, Korea's Supreme Court and judiciary ruled that the ownership of Lineage items belongs to NCSoft. There were a few conflicting rulings along the way. Many legal cases around digital assets in Korea have piled up, and most were civil or criminal cases about Lineage. Here's an example. People used so-called auto-programs, bots, to mine Lineage items. The terms of service clearly prohibit that. So, if caught, the account would be frozen. But the problem wasn't just the frozen account, because the Lineage world itself was extremely valuable. So disputes often went to court, and the rulings came down in favor of the terms. The terms of service must be respected. To study Lineage, I once went through a series of related court cases. Today's NFT blockchain landscape can be traced back to those Lineage rulings starting around 2009, then 2012, and 2016. So think about the items you use in Lineage. For example, I searched a few days ago and found that a level 8 Jin Myung Hwang's execution sword trades for about 300 million won. Now imagine freezing an account loaded with items of that value. There'd be an uproar, so players end up suing the company. But the precedents side with the company. In the end, no matter how much money you paid for an item, the ultimate ownership still belongs to NCSoft. So within Lineage, NCSoft is both the government and the god. Now, NFTs. What does it mean to mint items as NFTs, making use of a property of blockchain technology? It means many things. What I want to highlight is seamlessness. If a Lineage item becomes an NFT, I could take it out and use it in Roblox, or take it out of Roblox and use it in Minecraft. That's seamlessness. In principle, that's possible. Not with the current systems, of course. Today you'd need permission just to take it out, and permission from Roblox to use it there. Can I even use this inside your server? I once gave the example of Korean Air mileage. Because those miles live on Korean Air's servers, you can't really trade leftover miles. Even if you try, it won't be approved. But if those miles were on a blockchain, you could move them wallet to wallet and sell them for cash, no server approval needed. Then you could even use Korean Air miles to book Asiana flights, maybe even Singapore Airlines. Same idea here. If Lineage items become NFTs, they can move across to other platforms. That's why I emphasize seamlessness. This is exactly why the metaverse is bound to meet blockchain. Whatever the Supreme Court says about Lineage items, once they are NFTs, ownership truly rests with the user, not NCSoft. That shift is enormously important. The courts inevitably made NCSoft the god of Lineage, but Bitcoin and blockchain born on a totally different track mean that if NCSoft chooses to mint its items as NFTs, They can not only move across platforms, but also leave NCSoft's control. Saying that item belongs to NCSoft becomes merely symbolic, while actual ownership transfers to the purchaser. So why would NCSoft do this anyway? Trust plain and simple. Right now, Lineage assets are priced on faith that NCSoft won't suddenly lose its mind and flood the game economy with new assets that wreck it. Meanwhile, the broader narrative of fiat-based economies is crumbling. Fiat money is decaying. You could fairly call it corruption, driven, in the end, by politics. That's why we expect Bitcoin to be adopted as currency more in Africa, Southeast Asia, or Latin America than in the US or other major powers. Once a government loses trust, its power to issue money becomes purely formal and meaningless. So, to restore trust, they peg to the dollar, or potentially peg to Bitcoin. Until now, tying to the dollarization was the model, as in El Salvador, but now some seek to peg their currencies to Bitcoin as well. By making Bitcoin legal tender, they aim to gain governmental credibility, which is ultimately social trust, to strengthen the social trust network, lower time preference, and spur long-term investment. That's the hope, because trust matters enormously. So yes, this path is plausible. Likewise, game companies, regardless of what the Supreme Court rules, can choose to bind themselves and move forward in this way. Today I focused on one of the key reasons why game items should be made into NFTs, because once you understand the principles of Bitcoin and blockchain, as I know many of you do, you'll see exactly what I mean, and I trust you've understood. Have a great weekend, everyone. That's all for today. Thank you.